Hello, and welcome once again to another episode of Inside the World of MACK'S HEADROOM. I just want to show you something. You see these? Remember I told you I got the cool guy mic and stuff? Well, of course I had to get cool guy phones. I mean, they'd see how they're neat, stripes, tiger stripes and colors and stuff. But you know what? It makes me crazy trying to listen to my voice and talk at the same time. So, being an old school boomer, no more headphones. We're going to get down. Anyway, this is one of those spontaneous tapes because I have, for a long time, I haven't really gotten like addicted to a TV show, probably since like Breaking Bad, actually. I got addicted to a couple of other ones too, like Homeland and Boardwalk Empire and stuff. I thought they were really great, but they kind of petered out. I don't know, lost my interest. I did watch the whole things, but Better Call Saul is, in my humble opinion, quite a work of art. And I just finished season 4, which I've been waiting to come out on streamable format, so I don't know, maybe there's a season 5 now, but I don't think so yet. But I really don't want to make a major commentary about it or analyze it like a lot of these dudes do on YouTube. Rather, I just want to record like a vlog, I guess you'd call it, my reactions to a bunch of things. Because as I was watching the show for like the last 3 days, this season, and I've watched the other ones before, I had this mental process going on where I was like thinking about all this crazy shit. And so I thought, I'd just make a tape about it and see if I can intrigue you in some of my ideas. And also, I have a special social media exercise that maybe we could all participate in together and stimulate some discussion about this at the end. It's kooky, but it's interesting. But I'm kooky, so what are you going to do? Anyway, so I want to talk about What About Saul, but from a particular point of view, and that is, I want to compare the roles of Saul and Jesse. Because I see them as what you call in family therapy isomorphic. In other words, they're like very parallel to each other. And I think that's very interesting because both characters came out of one guy's head. And so that may say something about, Vince Gilligan as well. And it's nothing negative. I just think he's a very complicated dude. And so maybe we could take him apart a little bit too in the process. Not roast him. He's a good dude. I really love this show. As you remember, my 15 million subscribers, I'm sure there's a few of you that remember that I did a review on El Camino, and I panned it. And I really didn't like it. And I tried to be fair, but I really thought it was, as they say on YouTube, a POS. So, I've always wondered, why did Vince Gilligan do that? But anyway, I put that aside, and because I still liked What About Saul, and I caught, like, right after I watched El Camino, I caught the 3rd season of What About Saul. Why am I saying that? What About Saul? Better Call Saul. And dementia. And so I've been keeping up with it, and I made these observations despite the fact that I had really panned El Camino, and I was kind of giving up on, Vince Gilligan, but I liked Better Call Saul. So I caught the 3rd season, and now I just caught the 4th season. And I'm like, it'd be a vulgar expression if I said it, but, you get the point. I'm really kvelling, as we say in Yiddish, over this movie. I really dig it. Or not movie, this series, excuse me. So, let me first tell you why I think it was so good, just to give it a little bit of a pan. And I also want to set up a question, too, kind of. I just thought it was great. The reason being, just real cursorily, was first of all this character, Kim Wexler, who I also see a parallel between her and Skyler White in many ways. I mean, they're both put in odd positions by their significant other. But their moral character, I think, is very different. Although both of them get off. Oh, no, wait, let me correct myself. Ooh, that was spontaneous. They both get off on sort of doing corrupt shit, even though they represent themselves in one case as a very formal lawyer and in another case as a very loyal housewife, So there's a lot of parallels. And that's what this tape, it's evolving, see? what this tape is really about is the number of parallels that I keep seeing between actually Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, excluding El Camino. But I'm going to get back to El Camino and tell you why I really didn't like it, because it has to do with this comparison between, this parallel I'm going to draw between Jesse and Saul. I know that's a little wordy, but just hang in there. Remember, I'm a systemic thinker, so we're going to look at all kinds of a circle, right? Okay, between shows, between that larger system, right? Okay, so, first of all, Kim Wexler, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just an oddball, but I think she's like every guy's dream. A strong woman who will stand behind you no matter what kind of stuff you do, and she'll, I don't mean it like that, but I mean, you can get away with your own little shtick, and she stands behind you, she even gets off on it, she participates in it, but she still maintains her sense of whatever you want to call it, reservedness. She seems to love this guy dearly. She struggles with saying it, I think, but I'm crazy about her. She's attractive, and she's a fantastic actor. I don't even know her name, but I don't want to know her name. She's Kim Wexler at this point, Another thing I thought that was really cool about Better Call Saul after seeing, 4 seasons, is he's gone back to what I mentioned in my first tape, or my tape about El Camino, which you could go back and watch if you haven't seen yet, where I talked about the lack of a color palette in El Camino, where in Breaking Bad there was a great color palette. I never knew about color palettes until I started noticing these colors coming up all the time. And then my friend said, oh yeah, well there's this thing called a color palette. And I did some reading on it, and it's very interesting. And Vince Gilligan is like the Picasso of using what would you call it? Like a video color palette. I mean, he's unbelievable. Just watch the show and watch how it begins with all those bright colors in the beginning and stuff. But he also carries the same kind of colors. Maybe they're just because it's present in New Mexico. I'll have to call my buddy Bruce, because he spends half the year there, and ask him if there's a lot of purple in New Mexico. I know there's turquoise, but that's kind of a southwestern color. But anyway, there's a beautiful color palette. I mean, and it follows the characters, it follows the offices, it follows everywhere it goes. The use of color is so beautiful, and how this guy has created this series. It's unreal. Also, there's another thing that, when other directors have done it, I don't like it too much. But the way he uses it, man, it's beautiful. And that is, I'll give Quentin Tarantino a little bit of a plug for this, because I think he's kind of the most notorious for it, which is called time shifting. Which is where you see the beginning of something before it's happened, and the rest of the show is about what happened before it. And it's in scenes. It's not just like over time, like a show or a prequel. I'm talking about just, in one episode, you can see the beginning of the last episode, and then it shifts into the current one, and time goes back and forth. And Quentin Tarantino's famous for that. Look at Pulp Fiction, for instance, or what's the other one? Reservoir Dogs. There's a lot of time shifting, So, I mean, this guy is very sophisticated. Oh, and also, lastly, I mean, now this may not be for everybody, but the thing that I really got off on Better Call Saul is it's what I would call sort of like an avant-garde TV series. I mean, it's avant-garde. It's off a little bit. It's a little offbeat, and even though it's offbeat, it maintains a very strict structure of about 4 different subplots. I'm trying to remember. One would be the relationship between Mike and Gustavo Fring and that whole cartel scene. Then there's the other one, another different whole story about Saul and relationship to his brother, and relationship to Kim, and relationship to the law. I mean, there's that whole kind of subplot. And then those can be broken down into other ones, like the story of Hector Salamanca, I mean, and how he got paralyzed. I mean, he's balancing all these different subparts, but he's shifting the time around. I think he's also marketing this to a lot of people who've watched Breaking Bad. So if you're familiar with the show, you say, wait a minute, that didn't happen yet, or wait a minute, I know that couldn't happen because I know this is how Breaking Bad ends. I mean, it stimulates your mind like crazy. So to me, it's really just a really cool piece of television. I guess I've convinced you by now. So the question is, really, why are there so many people who don't like it? Because there are. And this is no knock on the people who don't like it. It's it's interesting. I've thought it through. It's like I'm like a priest in a way. Having been a therapist for so long, you just can't think about shit without thinking about the psychology behind it. If you were a priest, you'd say, well, there's some kind of spirituality to the fact that Saul wears purple. I don't know, but I mean, oh yeah, see, isn't that special thing they do before you die? It's purple. Ooh, very slick analogy there. But anyway, if it's so avant-garde, if they have such a nice color palette, if they use time shifting, if Kim Wexler is, the archetypal woman for me, I'll say that, then how come so many people don't like it? Well, I think the answer is very clear, and to tell it in more of a narrative form, it could be answered very simply. I have a friend who I've mentioned a couple times. I see her a couple times a week, and she's younger than me, and it's just purely a friendship thing, But I think we both like each other, and I was trying to convince her. I said, "Oh man, I've been watching Saul, man. You gotta check this out." And she goes, "I'm not gonna watch it." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "I just can't stand Saul. I can't stand him." And she said, "Nothing you can say is going to talk me into it. That guy is like, if I just get around and I want to take a bath." She's a gas. And that is probably why a lot of people don't like it. Because I can relate to that, Like, for instance, he's a slime ball. He pulls all this kind of bullshit that, is really quite slimy. I must say it's sort of lovable, though. And also, he's terribly manipulative. Oh my God, those scams, they too, I think, are Quentin Tarantino-like, because they go into like a fantasy land. Nobody's going to pull that shit off. But somehow Vince Gilligan convinces you that that's real and that this is part of a relationship. It's very cool in my opinion. But he is incredibly manipulative, He has a terrible haircut. I mean, think about it. Who wears their hair with a forelock like that anymore? That's always a little unkempt. Usually wears funky colors too. And he's also got that terrible voice. I mean, it's sort of a combination of like hoarse and nasal and sleazy. And, to me, it's very caricatural, But, there's a lot of reasons not to like Saul. And if the show is called Better Call Saul, well, maybe you better not call him because he's so goofy, okay? However, let me remind you that the character of Saul is supposed to be represented that way only in one subsystem, only in one aspect. And it's a little unfortunate, I think, that, what is his name again, Bob Odenkirk, that he's such a good actor that sometimes he like overdoes it. But then again, I think that's sort of that Quentin Tarantino-esque, overdone, caricatural sort of character formation, But there's a reason he's supposed to be like that, because that's part of him. Remember the whole's greater than the sum of the parts, right? Okay, so, that's part of him. But there's this beautiful, soft, underneath part of him that's protected because I think of a lot of life's hardships. We don't know much about his parents. I assume they weren't very present because his older brother, Chuck, crazy as he is, I just learned in the 4th episode, I hope it doesn't blow anything for anybody, but he was a caretaker in many ways for him. And oftentimes that meant getting him out of trouble. There's a very tender scene I won't tell you about that shows there was far more than that. But he was a caretaker for Jimmy. And I think that one of the reasons that Chuck has his own feelings of inferiority and why he's so goofy and stuff is because his mother, I think, didn't pay attention to him, so he became an overachiever. This is just my theory. He became an overachiever. And part of being an overachiever or a hero of the family, for whatever reasons we don't know about the parents, might have been to take care of this acting out child named Jimmy, right? Jimmy McGill. And so he was like a parentified child. Well, parentified childs have a lot of power over the children, the child that they're the pseudo-parent for. So they develop a lot of hatred for him, too, as much as they feel responsibility for him. Anyway, I don't know. That was really out there. I hope you captured it because I can't say it again. But I do think that, Saul is very needy. He's needy of his brother. and to get him out of trouble. And the brother is very dependent on him. When he goes crazy, the roles change, and now Jimmy becomes kind of a parentified parent. It's a very intense relationship, but it's very deep. And through that, despite the fact that Jimmy does all kinds of sleazy stuff because he's been conditioned for so long to be the way he is needy of his brother. He's dependent on his brother in many ways. Even though his brother's dependent on him, he's dependent for his approval, which he can never get. He's not, just like, here we go, here, just like Jesse's never going to get the approval of his parents, coming attractions. So, you know, he's a tortured soul. And but the one thing that shines through to me, and if I could just encourage anybody to go back and give it a second chance, and just a little advice, you know, would be like, try to just see the sleazy part of him as a caricature, but realize that underneath there's this really soft-hearted guy that just can't seem to ever live up to whatever expectations there are, which probably started back in terms of the expectations of that Chuck had for him and being his pseudo-parent, and probably whatever expectations his parents, who we don't see, had on Chuck to be the parent to Jimmy. You see what I mean? So there's all this kind of expectations going on, but he's a lovable guy. And, you know, he's got what I would call, in quotes, heart. And I say that like in game type talk, you know, like the dude's got heart. He's not only is he committed and loyal and lovable, but he's also courageous. He pulls shit off that most people wouldn't do. And that's my sort of character sketch of Jimmy. Notice, no psychiatric terms used whatsoever, really. Now, let's take a look at, did I say Jesse? I mean Saul. I'm sorry. See, I'm anxious to get to Jesse. Okay, so now let's take a look at Jesse, and we'll see these very insightful parallels. Who were Jesse's parents? They were these terribly overbearing people who he could never get their respect from. Okay, and they were very overbearing. They dictated who he should be, just like the brother tried to dictate who he should be, but he then would sabotage who he should be, right? Of Saul, I'm talking about. But now back to Jesse. So his parents were very overbearing. He could never do anything right. I remember there was all these tender scenes where he wanted to show his artwork to his parents, and then this is in Breaking Bad, and then his parents would always say, "Oh, you know, that's nice, but you know, your brother just won the high IQ of, you know, the United States award," and you know, he would fall apart inside, and then go act out, just like Jimmy goes and acts out, right? They're very parallel. Just one doesn't do drugs, at least I don't think. Not yet, at least, right? And also the thing that, and here's, you know, I could almost start, well, no, I'm not going to conclude yet because I have my special surprise coming up. But, again, Jesse, like Saul, has heart. He has heart. He has softness. He has tenderness. It's just submerged under a different type of exterior, and it's a younger one, and it's a drug-laden one, or with Saul it's different, but it's still kind of corrupt, right? They act out, and both of them act out in these corrupt ways because they can't ever achieve the expectations of either their brother or, in this case, in Jesse's case, his parents. And also, Jesse, guess what? He's got a brother issue too, which is, if you remember, he has a younger brother who was like the child prodigy. You know, he was like the hero of the family, which, you know, as far as family therapy theory would go, it would be like probably the parents are kind of fucked up. You know, you can tell they don't have much of a relationship. They're sort of plastic. They're, you know, very awkward. They live governed by rules. They have no spontaneity. So you can imagine what their marriage is like. You know, Jimmy excuse me, I'm getting confused with the names. Jesse has this heart that's very courageous. He's killed people. He's pulled off he's demonstrated loyalties. He has this quell for Mr. White, much in the same way that Saul has for his older brother, despite, again, all the bullshit he does with him. And though, you know, and actually those relationships, like Mr. White would be to Jesse, and Chuck would be to I'm sorry, to Saul, are they're very parallel, and you can start to make sort of judgments about the fact that there probably wasn't a lot up above, whether it be Jesse in relation to his parents or Chuck and Jimmy in relation to their parents. It seems like there are empty spaces out there, and that's why these characters came out the way they did. Boy, I'm starting to sound like David Icke, the David Icke of modern television. Okay, so let's see. Let's go on here. Now, some people have been saying they think I'm cool, so I hope you can put up with this kind of stuff. Okay, so they're basically the same characters, which I'm going to bounce back for a second. Probably says something about Vince Gilligan. Now, this is no slam; it's just a game, okay? But it says some things. It may say some things about Vince Gilligan, because I think all great artists project some part of themselves onto their artwork, and in this case, it's how they sculpt these characters and stuff. So we could start to wonder a little bit about Vince Gilligan, and maybe he was a middle child, perhaps, and could because if you look at both of those characters, one is a younger brother not being able to compete with an older brother, and the other one with Jesse is an older brother, Jesse, having his heels stepped on by a younger brother, which is the classic formation, by the way, of Alfred Adler's conception, or Rudolf Dreikers as well, of a three-sibling subsystem. You follow? I don't know. I'm just throwing that in. I'm kind of free associating. I'm sorry, bear with me, but see if you can make some sense out of this. So, they're very parallel characters. Well, as I was thinking more, and here's where I guess I could sort of start to wind up a little bit, but I think you can see where they're very, very similar characters, and they both, Saul has his Chuck, and Jesse also has his Mr. White, and the dynamics are almost identical, right? So again, getting back to Vince, this is just a game. This is the finale, okay? But I was thinking to myself that, since I mentioned before, since we're such a psychological culture, that maybe we could play a psychological game with the comment section below. So, perhaps we could start asking ourselves questions like, you think Vince Gilligan might be a middle child? You think that the fact that there's an older brother that the younger brother, Sal, can never live up to the expectations, and then on the other side, there's a younger brother nipping at the heels of Jesse. Neither way, they're squeezed in, and neither of them can ever compete with these two siblings. So I'm just curious. That's just one thought, but see, you could go on and on, like, Mr. Fring, does that represent something in Vince Gilligan? Could be, who knows? How about Mike? Ooh, and here's a funny one, okay? Who would Vince Gilligan's ideal archetypal woman be? Now that would be very interesting, because because we'd have to see. Well, as I said before, wait a minute, I have to recapture a spontaneous moment I had during this video. I drew an analogy also between Kim Wexler and Skyler White. They're both righteous people. One's a lawyer, one's a good housewife, mother, whatever. They're both kind of moral characters, but they love to kind of get their hands dirty. And they find these guys to get their hands dirty with. So there's just a tremendous amount of parallels. So I just wonder, what kind of woman Vince likes. This is all artistic license, okay? But so let's play this game if anybody wants to. What are your hypotheses about what these parallels mean in relationship to Vince Gilligan? I doubt that all of it is just his pure mechanical ability, So I don't really care. I just wanted to share my feelings about this series. It's really good, and the parallels. If you can see those parallels, you might get hooked or sucked into giving Better Call Saul another chance if you haven't, because I really think it's excellent, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But this be my show, so please leave your comment sections below. And once again, thanks a lot. I appreciate you letting me just go on for 24 minutes. But one last thing. I was thinking as I was talking, in family therapy, there's this thing that's called a linear orgy, which means that they get a bunch of people behind the mirror and they try to create as many like A leads to B theories by watching a whole family, and then they get together and they just throw around their A leads to B theories, and well, what it turns into is a circular idea: A leads to B leads to C leads to D. So I've thrown around all these different things. Now I have tried to draw some parallels, but we've just had a linear orgy in family therapy talk, so I hope no one's offended, and I hope I don't get any sexual harassment charges. I'm sorry. Anyway, this has been fun. So let's get Thank you very much, and welcome for another episode. No, we'll try it one more time. Hello. One more time. Well, thank you very much for... Get out of here. Goodbye. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. Shit happens. Oh, hang on. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh my God. I can't believe I did that. I left out the best part. Oh my God. All right, let me see if I get my shit together again. I had trouble making that ending. We'll see if I can do it. Here's the catch. Remember, I started this whole thing out by saying that there is some reasons I discovered why I don't like the movie El Camino. And what came out for me after watching the Better Call Saul thing and making all the comparisons and analogies I did before, here's the catch. Here's why I don't like... Besides that they didn't use a color palette, that really pisses me off. But here it is. In that movie, Jesse never shows that soft part of him. Think of all the tender scenes, as painful as they might have been, that have to do with him struggling with life. And in El Camino, you never see that. All you see is him grunting through this maze of bullshit. And so I couldn't leave it out. I'm sorry. Gosh, I wish I could have woven it in a way that would build to some big crescendo. But as I said, shit happens. And this has been another episode of Inside the World of MACK'S HEADROOM. I did it. Whatever. Oh, God. Who's the wise off in the house? See you later. Bye.